Check out my new tag team, baby, Monty and the Pharaoh.
Hey, Jimmy, don't forget to tell them about Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast.
Well, you know what, I would, but you already did it.
It's Monty and the Pharaoh.
With Monty and Pharaoh.
The Monty and Pharaoh Show.
Monty and Pharaoh, bro.
Monty and the Pharaoh.
Monty and the Pharaoh. Monty and the Pharaoh.
The Monty and Pharaoh Show.
And you're watching the Monty and Pharaoh Show.
Monty and the Pharaoh.
With Monty and the Pharaoh.
Monty and the Pharaoh.
It's Monty and the Pharaoh.
Monty and the Pharaoh.
Monty and the Pharaoh. Monty and the Pharaoh.
Monty and the Pharaoh.
Monty and Pharaoh.
It's Monty and the Pharaoh.
And Monty and the Pharaoh. Oh, is it Monty and the Pharaoh?
Monty and Pharaoh.
The Monty and the Pharaoh Show.
Monty and the Pharaoh.
To the Monty and the Pharaoh Show. And it's Monty and the Pharaoh, baby.
Watching Monty and the Pharaoh.
With Monty and the Pharaoh.
Monty and the Pharaoh. Oh, what a run. Monty and the Pharaoh.
Monty and the Pharaoh.
Hey, cut the fucking music. When you want the best in professional wrestling, Long Island, there's only one place you're going to get it, right here.
Monty and the Pharaoh. Now, that's not just the coolest, and that's not just the best. That, my friends, is just incredible. Monty and the Pharaoh.
You've got the future Hall of Famer, that rocker, Marty Jannetty, MJ in the house, and I'm sitting here with two more future Hall of Famers, Monty and the Pharaoh. We're doing that stuff and we're gonna rock it.
Straight to the top. We're living this life, not just dreaming it, we're doing it for real. Straight to the top. Working hard every day just to live a better way.
All right, welcome back to Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast out of our new home, Indie Music TV, here at a straight out of Ronkonkoma, Long Island. You know when you write a script and then you put the wrong word in place?
Nice.
That's when you stutter over your words, right? I know we've been off for a few months. I'd like to familiarize the audience with the star
Fancy schmancy.
of the show.
Oh,
to my right,
Yeah,
Mr.
to
Jimmy
your right.
Farrow. Jimmy, how are you, my friend?
It says here to the left. What?
I changed it on mine, pal.
Oh, man. Talk about on the fly. You
Don't
rock.
abuse me, please.
No. You?
It's already
No.
been a rough night.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, what are you going to do?
How you been, pal? I haven't seen you in a long
Good,
time. How you
man.
handling this whole
Waiting
thing?
for this insanity just like everybody else to blow over. It's been Groundhog Day every day for what seems like an eternity.
Get up, go to work, come home,
At least we can.
eat dinner.
At least we
Yeah,
can
thank
go to
God,
work. Thank
right?
you, God.
Thank
Yeah,
God.
At least we can go to work.
I
But,
totally agree with you,
know,
my
we're
friend.
both in the epicenter of it, and as you know, some of our family members are in the epicenter of this thing. And for those folks out there who are laughing and think it's a joke, it's not a joke. I mean, I've got 3 pairs of masks in my jacket. Me. If I'm doing it, come on, guys. be
God
safe.
bless all the people out there, and
Absolutely.
God bless.
God bless us all, everyone.
God bless us all, everyone.
Okay, Tiny Tim.
Okay,
Sweet.
Tiny Tim. That's
Yeah,
really
there
good.
you go. Well,
I'd like to thank the band that
Truthful.
sings the theme song for Monty the Pharaoh, Aqua Cherry, our theme song, Straight to the Top. You can also catch their songs, Yes, Yes, Forever, and Seasons. Aqua Cherry's music can be found on Spotify, iTunes, Reverb Nation, or where music is sold. Holy crap, I am
Wherever
all my
music is
words.
sold, yeah.
And our outro is sung by none other than our own Jimmy Farrow and his partner Bart Griggs from the band Wisteria Hall. Wisteria Hall sings such great songs as In My Dreams, This Life, which I love,
Yes.
Not Far Behind, which I love.
Thank you.
And they could also be bought and seen on Spotify, iTunes, and Reverb Nation.
Yeah.
And if you're interested, Monty the Pharaoh can be seen on YouTube,
all over the place.
IndieMusicTV.com,
Yeah.
Facebook Live, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Anchor, and Channel 115 every Tuesday from 8:30 to 9 p.m. And for the early risers on Saturday, 6:30 a.m. to 7 a.m. Our super producer, Luke, in studio. Luke, how are you?
Over there.
Living life, my friends.
Did you know we were on so many channels and we're on cable TV? Did you even have that clue?
I did not know you guys made it to cable TV. That's how you know you really made it.
Do you know that you're going to be on cable TV now?
I'm just got so much more excited to be here.
Look who just really
Wow.
made it. There you go. Awesome.
Really excited.
You know, we won't be able to go to the tobacco store. They'll be asking us to sign their shoes. Anyway.
Jimmy,
Yeah,
let's get
what?
into wrestling.
Okay,
Did
fine.
you catch Dark
So
Side of the
quickly.
Ring? UWF, our
Okay,
own Sunny
all
Beach, was on this Tuesday.
Mm-hmm. Now, you know, and the audience at home knows, if they've been fans of the show for the last 2+ years, this is more your speed than mine, these documentaries that pull all the dirt out and everything like that. I purposely did not watch this because I want the fresh reaction that we'll get from tonight's esteemed guest. So I want to know his take, and then I'll probably go and check all of this out.
Well, tonight's esteemed guest is none other than Chris Benoit, Benoit's wife, Nancy Benoit's first husband, Mr. Jim Daus.
There we go.
We'll get to Jim right after this commercial break.
Stay tuned.
Let me get this up. All right, I want to thank our sponsors. Without them, Jimmy, the show couldn't go on. They take care of us. They help us out.
They do.
And, but let's welcome our star of the show, Mr. Jim Daus. Jim, how are you, buddy?
Hey, buddy. Doing pretty well. How y'all doing?
Thank you for hanging in there. We had some internet and technical problems. You've been a trooper. I'm going to turn you over to the Pharaoh, my friend.
How you doing, Jim? Thanks for being on the show with us tonight. I gotta ask you right off the bat. Jim, if you don't mind, can you just turn down your microphone a little bit? Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you.
I understand that you
had a bit of a scare with the COVID-19, the coronavirus situation. Can you fill us in on what happened with that?
Yeah, we were in New Orleans with a large group from my company, Tri-State Distributors. We were at the Fireplace and Grill Show in New Orleans, right about the end. It was the second week of March. We got back and people started getting sick in our group. We had about, maybe a dozen of us in the group that went to New Orleans for the show. And one by one, everybody was getting positive tests for coronavirus. And about 6 or 7 were positive. 3 more of us got sick. I got sick. But my test came back negative. And so who knows if I had it or not. But most likely did, but it might have had a false negative or something like that. When I've been locked up at the house since I got back on March 15th. So glad to be here. Gives me something to do.
There you go. When you first got the news that you could potentially have this virus that's obviously affecting the entire world, what went through your mind? I mean, obviously, were you scared? I mean, what goes through one's mind when they find out that they might have this and have to take a test to see if they do?
I had a panic attack about the second night. I couldn't breathe. I was laying in bed. I couldn't breathe. I had to get up, and it was scary. It really was. But it ended up maybe I didn't have it. Maybe I did. If I did have it, I did have a minor case. Some of the people that were with us were out and off their feet for 2 weeks. I was only about 5 days.
Okay.
So Jim, let's get to what our point here. Growing up, how did you meet Nancy? How did you, growing up, how did you meet Nancy?
Nancy and I met in high school. Well, actually, my last day of my senior year in high school, I was at the school to pick up or drop off some books on the last day. She was at the bus loop and with some friends of mine, and I didn't know she lived right around the corner from me. So I ended up giving her a ride home. And we live in a rural part of Florida, so it's about a 45-minute ride home. And we became friends that day, started dating about a week later, got married about a year later.
Wow.
Can I ask you?
It was her junior year, the last day of school for her junior year.
Your first impression, the first time you laid your eyes on her, what goes through your mind?
Ah, beautiful woman.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No doubt.
Yep.
Now, were you a wrestling fan growing up, Jim?
I really wasn't. I grew up in New York City. My family moved to Florida. Actually, I lived in Elmont, Long Island, and my family moved to Florida in the early 70s, and started going to wrestling when I was about 17 or 18 at the Eddie Graham Sports Stadium in in Orlando, and a few matches in Ocala at the Highlight Fronton. I just went a handful of times, and started getting interested in it.
So who did you idolize growing up as far as a wrestler?
Didn't really idolize anybody, but back then it was Dusty Rhodes and Barry Windham and Mike Graham, Steve Kern, Jimmy Garvin. That was the good guys at the time in Florida.
Can you tell us what kind of person, what type of person Nancy was? There's always rumors when you're a celebrity. I'm just curious to hear directly from the source. What sort of person was she, Jim?
She was fun-loving, an amazing person. She was a great wife for 4+ years. She just liked to enjoy life and have fun. She really didn't want to work that much.
Was she shy privately? Because she certainly, she was like, I guess silent but deadly would be a great way to describe her on-screen persona. How was she behind the scenes? Was she reserved?
She was. She was very shy until we had to pull it out of her. After we got married, I had to pull that personality out of her a little bit.
So, did you introduce Nancy to wrestling? How does that come about? How does she get involved in the wrestling world?
It's a long story, but we started going wrestling on Sunday nights, and it was in Orlando at the Eddie Graham Sports Stadium, and we'd call in and reserve our seats. And they never spelt my name correctly. It was always Davis or Daus or something else for the first 4 or 5 weeks. It's actually Daus, D-A-U-S. So they never got my tickets correct. So after they messed them up for the 4th or 5th week, they said, you know what? We have 3 seats available on the front row that you can have every week if you want like season tickets.
Okay.
So I said, that's a great deal. $10 tickets, front row. So we started going, me and 2 of my friends. And at the time, Nancy was only 16 years old. Her parents wouldn't let her go, so she wasn't going at first.
Your love of wrestling. Measure it for me at the time when you got Nancy involved. I mean, were you like a huge, passionate fan, or was this just a whim? What gave you the idea to get Nancy to think about this?
It was more like a whim. It wasn't really that much wrestling. We knew Nancy had some kind of talent. We didn't know what. We didn't know what we were going to do. She didn't want to have an office job or 9-to-5 job or anything like that. She wanted to do something different. So we just fell into wrestling after a while.
And what were you doing at the time? Were you just supporting her in her dream to fall into wrestling?
I was a meter reader at a gas company. Contract work at a gas company, reading gas meters from 17 years old to about 20.
Now, was Nancy involved in apartment wrestling too? How does that come about?
Yeah, well, that came a little bit later. What happened was Bill Otten, who most of these pictures are taken by, Bill Otten, the wrestling photographer, he was always sitting right across from us shooting the pictures at each match in Orlando. And he took one picture of Terry Funk taking my chair out from underneath me in the front row and throwing the chair into the ring. And Nancy was sitting right next to me, of course. So I think you do have a picture of that also, Terry Funk throwing the chair.
Yeah.
And that picture, Bill Otten just took it and had Nancy's face in the picture. So he sent it with his rolls of film to the Japanese wrestling magazines, and they put it a 3-page pull-out centerfold. And when he got the magazine back, he brought it over to us. We never met Bill or talked to Bill, and he said, "Can I talk to you guys for a minute?" And he showed us the picture and showed us the magazine, and he said, "I just had to show you guys this. It's your chair and your wife's face right there when Terry Funk's throwing the chair." So that's how we got to meet Bill. And about 2 weeks after that, Bill Otten said he just bought a bunch of new equipment, some new photo equipment. And he's never done anything but wrestling, really shooting. So he wanted to try out his new photo equipment on a model or some girls or something like that. And he asked if Nancy would be available. He said, "If we can use Nancy in these pictures, I'll give you a whole portfolio. All the pictures will be yours. It's really just testing the equipment." So we got to be good friends with Bill Otten, and that's how we got into wrestling.
Did you ever, when you were getting Nancy into the business as her husband, as a man, did you ever feel concerned, like when it was happening, as you're getting into the business, is there a little voice maybe possibly asking yourself, this could get out of control. She's a beautiful woman. They may try to use her for her looks. Yeah. The wrestlers are all pretty much, from what we hear, a lot of them were very aggressive towards any woman. They don't care if it's your wife. They don't care if it's someone's girlfriend. Did you ever early on get flashes in your own head going, this could get crazy. Am I doing the right thing here?
No, it really didn't. Everything seemed to be working out well. Nancy and I always got along real well. We had a very good marriage. Everything was good. It was later on that those things popped up.
Okay. Well, you want to elaborate on that, Jim? Or?
Well, Nancy was getting more and more popular, and her head got a little bit bigger, of course, and she knew that we could actually do this. And we grew apart. We started growing apart. She started doing some shows on the road when I wasn't with them, when I wasn't with the group. She started doing some shows in Texas and Baltimore and places like that without me. And then when she got home one trip, we started talking. I said, "Nance, I really think that I am holding you back. Us being married is holding you back.
Wow.
We are starting to grow apart, and you might want to think about this." And right after we thought about this for about 2 days, after I picked her up at the airport, we talked about it. We decided, let's separate and see what happens. As soon as we separated, her career just took off like crazy.
How hard was this for you? I mean, you made a very, very mature decision without, it sounds like there wasn't any kind of altercations or friction. How was this for you to do? That's got to be hard.
It was tough. It was tough. It was the worst year of my life. There's no doubt about that. When we were going through the divorce and everything else and watching her become famous, that was our dream. The whole gimmick and everything else, the way she dressed and so forth, we put all that together, both of us together. It was tough.
Right.
But it was for the best.
Did you have a relationship with Kevin Sullivan at all?
Yes, Kevin and I were friends. The way this whole thing started is after Bill got this equipment, the photo equipment, he started taking the photo equipment to the matches on weekends mostly. The big shows like Lakeland Civic Center, the Orange Bowl in Miami, Bayfront Center, St. Pete, and he'd bring Nancy and I with him to set up all the equipment. So we were working with Bill and helping Bill set up all the equipment and shoot the wrestlers, and we were shooting wrestlers. And Billy Jack Haynes came in one day, was watching us and talking with us, and he wanted to get a couple girls in for the shoot. And he said, "Nancy's great, let's get Nancy, and don't you have a friend or somebody else?" And Bill had another friend that he brought in. So a couple of weeks later, we started shooting these pictures with Billy Jack and the two girls. And Kevin came in to watch us shoot. And Kevin became interested in the whole thing, and we did some pictures with Kevin then. And Kevin and I were pretty close friends. All three of us were close friends for a couple of years or year and a half there. We were with each other on the road quite a bit. And I don't have any hard feelings for Kevin. Last time I talked to Kevin was probably 10 or 11 years ago after the horrible tragedy. I do cover the whole state of Florida for Tri-State Distributors selling high-end fireplaces and barbecue grills. and he had that gym, Froggy's, down in Isle Morada in the Keys. So I stopped by after the tragedy, and we had a long talk, and I probably stopped by once or twice more after that. But I believe then he sold the gym, and he was no longer in the Keys. So I haven't talked to Kevin in probably 10 years. But Kevin and I never had any problems or any issues.
Just to make the timeline clear, so when Kevin and Nancy became involved, you were already separated? True or false?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so there wasn't any real... So how were you and Kevin over the
Well,
years? You guys are good?
you said they're good, but here's my question, Jim, and I'm not trying to start anything. I know you were separated from Nancy, but then you find out that Kevin's with Nancy. Do you feel betrayed at all, or do you feel like your friendship, like maybe this was going behind your back?
I felt bad at the time, yeah. I did feel... I felt betrayed at the time, but, now I'm 35, 40 years later, married to a wonderful person for 31 years, my wife Sue, and she's amazing. It worked out great. Everything worked out.
That's amazing, right? That's amazing.
It is.
Well,
Nancy, when I talked to Kevin, but like I said, 10 or 11 years ago, we had a very good conversation. It was no problem, no concern, and I have no hard feelings. And I told him that.
As Nancy's star was rising, and of course
you were watching from afar at this point. How did you guys ever stay in touch while this was going on? I mean, did you stay in contact over the years with Nancy from time to time, or was that even a possibility, considering you were involved in the life you've spoke of now with your wife of 31 years? I mean, was there any relationship with Nancy as her star rose?
A little bit here and there. The first 2 years, we did talk off and on what she was doing, what her career was doing, and so forth. Then it was odd. I would run into her in airports all over the place. Run into her in Chicago. Or in Iowa one time. I mean, it was crazy how I'd run into an airport. And a lot of time we were both flying back to Daytona. That's why I still live in the Daytona area, and that's where she was living. So we'd see each other once in a while, or talk to each other once in a while, yes. So it was always good.
Were you ever seated on the same plane together on the same seat, like next to each other? Get out of here.
What? By coincidence?
Well, I was promoting Badman contests on the side. Right after wrestling, I started working with Baddest Company and was promoting Badman contests all over the United States. I was working with two partners in doing that. So we were traveling around a lot. Also, we were running a dozen shows a year all over the United States. So I was flying a lot. And I fly a lot for my business also with the high-end fireplaces, the high-end barbecue grill. So I was on the road a lot. So one trip, I was running late from a Badman contest. And it was like the OJ thing running through the airport.
Yeah.
Got to the gate right before they closed it. And got on the plane, and they said, "There's one seat in the back." All right, so I get on the plane, go all the way to the back, and Nancy's sitting right there.
Wow.
What is that like? Is it like, hey, how you doing? Or is it like, gloop?
It was, hey, how you doing? I looked down. I said, Nancy. She goes, oh my God, sit down. We talked for 2.5 hours on the way to Atlanta, and then we changed planes in Atlanta. Got on the next plane and sat together on the plane from Atlanta to Daytona. And then my wife was picking me up from the airport down that trip. So I get off the plane with my ex-wife and my new wife picking us up. It was pretty comical.
And your new wife, I'm sure she was happy about that, right?
Oh yeah, thrilled.
At first, she was like, "What the heck is going on?" But then Nancy put her arms around her and gave her a big hug and said, "Oh, I've heard so many good things about you and everything else." And I said, "Sue, this is my ex-wife, Nancy." And it was an experience.
I want to go back to your conversation with Sullivan. What does Sullivan say to you?
It's been, like I said, that was 10, 11 years ago. He was just telling, we were talking about the whole thing and how horrible it was. We didn't talk about what happened after Nancy and I split and them two got together. We didn't talk about that. We were just talking about how bad the situation was.
Okay.
All right. Before I get to Dark Side of the Ring, quick question on Nancy and the Hustler lawsuit. If anyone doesn't know, in 2007, Hustler published nude photos of Nancy after her death. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, that was, first of all, Nancy and I never wanted to get into Hustler or any of those magazines or anything like that. There was a shock job in the Orlando area. It was a shock jock radio show on WDIZ. Baxter and Mark, Rick Baxter and Mark Stamansky. Nancy was a lot, like you said, Nancy didn't want to work. So a lot of times we'd go to bikini contests, things like that. Miss JJ Whispers, Miss Hawaiian Tropical Florida, things like that. And she'd enter them, and a lot of times she'd win, and that would pay the bills. It was really good. So we met these two shock jocks, and I believe it was at the Florida Miss Hawaiian Tropic contest. And we became friends with Mark Samansky. Now, Nancy was 20, and Nancy was 19, and I was 20. And we became friends with Mark Samansky and his wife. So we went out to dinner with him a couple times. And again, we were married, we were young, we were kids, we were stupid. We went to their condo in Orlando one night after dinner and drank some more. And we went to one room. Mark and his wife went to their room. Of course, we did our thing. We spent the night over there, and we had no idea, but Mark Samansky filmed it. And what happened, those pictures that went to Hustler was sold by Mark Samansky to Hustler for $1,000 before he died.
Wow.
He sold the video.
Wow.
How angry did this make you?
That's why it was in court so many times.
Oh my God. This must have infuriated you. It's like double
insulting after the tragedy. How on earth did you keep your mental facilities together during this?
Well, we didn't even know. We had no idea. The video appears after Nancy passed away.
Right.
We had no idea that it even existed. And 6 months later, Bill Otten actually called me. He heard something about it. We found something on the internet. He said, "Hey, you need to take a look at this." And I knew that it wasn't good when I saw what was coming out, and it just went from there. So who knows? 35 years later, it's crazy.
Right. How does that affect
your business life, like your life now?
It really doesn't. Few people know who I am. I don't go out and telling people normally. They usually find out the hard way, and if they do, it makes me like my 15 minutes fame type thing.
Jim, does it frustrate you? It's been said in the past, let me make sure I got this name right. Sandra Tofolini, the sister of Nancy, has gone on record in the past as saying that, when Nancy and you were divorcing, Nancy and Kevin were deeply in love. The stories popped up over times. Now, you did describe that there were no issues. Is there anything to her comments, or is it, that cut and dry the way she tried to make it out, or is this just, BS coming from your end?
No, Sandra was young. We used to babysit Sandra. When Sandra was a little girl, 6 years old, she'd be with us on weekends and everything else. She didn't know back then what was really. Kevin and Nancy started after we were divorced or after we were separated. That started later when they were on the road. Sandra just doesn't remember.
I got to ask you while we have you.
I just want your thoughts on this, because I have to know how you feel emotionally when you hear this kind of crap. The rumors that have gone on for years that Kevin Sullivan was the one behind this. Does this make you sick? Can you just give us your thoughts on this sort of rumor?
Behind what part?
Kevin was rumored to
behind Nancy's death.
After Nancy
now,
left.
This is not coming from us, obviously. This is something we've read on the internet that makes me sick every time I read it. So I wonder, what is your response to something like this?
No way on earth Kevin had anything to do with it. No
Thank
way.
you. Thank you.
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
Were you still talking to Nancy? Were you still talking to Nancy when she was married to Chris?
The last time I talked to Nancy, I got an email from her when she was pregnant, and that's when she was 40 years old. That's the last time I've ever heard from Nancy, and because Nancy and I never wanted kids, we weren't going to have kids. I have a son. Things happen, of course. I have a son that's 23 years old and going to Florida State University right now for his master's. And Nancy, when she got pregnant, she sent me an email. Guess what? I'm pregnant. And I hadn't talked to her in a couple of years at that point. So I said, well, guess what? I have a son also.
Wow.
It was a very brief email conversation. And I think she was very, very happy with Chris because I never heard from her again.
What were your feelings when you find out about this murder? I know you're upset, but like, what goes through your mind?
It was horrible. It was really bad. It was It was a rough month, actually, because Nancy kept her professional name as Daus quite a bit. Everybody knew that. So the media wouldn't leave us alone. And gosh, I had to turn my cell phone off, my house phone off, and everything else. The first day, we had 75 phone calls from Time, Life, People, the New York Daily News, everybody, ESPN, you name it. It was a really rough time.
Have you kept in contact with Nancy's family over the years after this?
Not really, just Sandra. I do talk to Sandra occasionally. I talk to Sandra probably at least once a year. Her parents, I've only seen them for the court trials and stuff like that. I feel so bad for her family. At times, I wish I didn't help Nancy get into wrestling. Who knows where she would be now? She probably wouldn't have been passed away. I do feel bad at times about that. But I feel so bad for her family and everything that they've been through.
Your personal thoughts on Chris Benoit, please.
Know the man. I know bad things happened. I don't know Nancy's life that last 7 years when she was with Chris. I don't know how bad of a person he was to her. We do know what he did, and hopefully he burns in hell.
I couldn't have said that any better myself.
Can't argue with it.
No, you can't. You can't
argue with it.
How do you feel about Chris Benoit's son and the pain he's going through? Did you watch the Dark Side of the Ring episode? Obviously you did.
Oh, yeah. I watched it a couple times, yes. And I'm glad that Sandra and him got back together. That was really good. He's going through the same thing Sandra went through. And Sandra's taken is really, really hard. Nancy was Sandra's life. And I feel so bad for Sandra. And her Chris's son also.
Would you say the Dark Side of the Ring episode was accurate?
Well, the early parts, like you said, Sandra didn't remember a lot. The first 20 minutes of it. After that was really about Chris. And I think it was well put together, the Dark Side episode. I think it focused a little too much on Benoit and Guerrero. I don't know if that was really the cause of anything. I think they played that up a little bit too much.
That's a great point. I felt like the piece itself was making excuses for why Benoit did what he did.
Exactly. That's how I felt. And I think it was more of the steroids and all that. The brain damage or whatever he could have had, that kind of thing.
Look, it's clear you had a really good relationship with Nancy, but I'm going to ask you this question. Other rumors state that Nancy was a pretty aggressive woman and would get physical.
Any truth?
Any truth to that on your end? What you experienced?
Never. Not one time. Not one time did we ever lay a hand on each other. She was always sweet, lovable Nancy. Never had an issue like that. I've heard the stories over the years about her being physical, but I don't know if they're true.
You mentioned Billy Jack Haynes earlier, and he's sweet and lovable too.
Yes,
we love Billy Jack here at Monty the Pharaoh. But I got to ask you this: how much drug scene did you see in the brief time as you're breaking Nancy? And were you concerned that was she vulnerable to narcotics? Did you ever wonder or worry about how much that could affect her or the business itself? Because Benoit was obviously hooked on roids or whatever it was that scrambled his mind. Other people did massive amounts of coke and all these. Were you concerned about whether or not that could change her as a person?
I was, yes. I was concerned about that. Yeah, we didn't see a lot of it, but we saw enough, and I was definitely concerned about it. And that was one of the decisions that I wanted to get out of it.
Should Nancy be in the Hall of Fame someday?
Nancy should have been in the Hall of Fame years ago. Nancy was the first warning of wrestling.
You think they'll ever touch it because of what Chris did? Vince will ever entertain the thought?
I think it's a must. I think he has to. There are people pushing for it. You got to know, she was, again, when we started this whole thing, when Kevin and the group and the whole Troop of Darkness started this, and we had Nancy chained to Kevin and so forth, we were the first people to do that. She was the first woman to do anything like that, and she just went from there to Robin Green to woman, from the Fallen Angel. She pioneered women in wrestling that we know today. It wouldn't be a Miss Elizabeth, Precious, Sunshine, and all the rest of them without what Nancy did.
How did you feel when she was taking,
like, you know, when she went to ECW, for example, and she would actually take a cane shot or something like that? How'd that make you feel?
Only you would do that.
Nancy was tough.
She was. Okay.
Nancy was tough. Nancy wasn't like a normal girl.
Did you witness some of her in ring? Did you witness some of her in?
I mean, were you there for a lot of this stuff?
Only the early stuff. Very early, just the beginning.
No cane shots for you, huh?
I gotta tell you, Jim. I think you're downplaying
your knowledge on wrestling. You calling a lot of women wrestlers names out there, and you were going deep too, man.
Spit out the roll call.
Yeah, you did. You spit out the roll. Are you a closet wrestling fan?
You still got the
anymore. I got out of it.
There you go. So I gotta ask you: is fame overrated, my friend? With the unfortunate, things you've witnessed over the years, is fame overrated, or what say you?
No, I believe it is. Some of the stuff that we went through, just my family and I, after Nancy's murder, it was horrible. The paparazzi and everything else. And you got to remember, I was away from Nancy for 30 years at the time, or whatever it was. And I had paparazzi in my driveway. They wouldn't let us out of the house. It was crazy.
Wow.
That's amazing.
That's actually insane, quite honestly. 30 years? 30 years, and all of a sudden the whole world's up his crankshaft? I would have lost my mind.
Again, you probably can't answer this question, but I've always wondered why Nancy never went into the WWE when Chris moved to the WWE. Do you think she just wanted out of the wrestling scene and just be a mother?
Yes, there was no doubt. Nancy didn't, again, Nancy could have had a lot more opportunities and a lot bigger career if she wanted to. She had that much talent. I just don't think she really wanted to work.
How do you feel about the never-ending debate from certain wrestling fans that Chris Benoit, the wrestler, and Chris Benoit, the person, should be subdivided and only his wrestling should be judged and he belongs in the Hall of Fame? How's that make you feel?
That's crazy. That's insane. Chris Benoit should not be in any Hall of Fame. Plain and simple.
Fair enough.
We're going to take a quick commercial break, Jim, and then we're going to come back and then do some parting shots, and just give us a couple seconds here, okay?
Stay tuned.
All right, we're back with our special guest, Jim Daus, ex-husband of Nancy Benoit. Jim, any final advice for some wrestlers who bring their wives into the business? What kind of advice would you give them?
Well, after what I experienced, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't bring my wife into the business of wrestling at this time. Like people used to ask me, how did you guys get in? And I said, well, it was like we were in the right place at the right time. But really, what I tell people now is we were probably in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that's where we ended up.
Wow. That's
Jim, were you ever offered any chance to return to wrestling after splitting with Nancy? Did you ever get a phone call from anybody like a Paul Heyman, or have you ever even spoke to Vince McMahon somehow over the years?
No, when we were working together in Florida and Texas and Georgia and all that, we were with the NWA, the Championship Wrestling of Florida, and so forth like that. So Vince hadn't really started yet. You got to remember, we were doing this from 81 to 85. But that was really before Vince.
Gordon Soley, baby.
So you had your regular job. What was Nancy making in the beginning of her career as, as a valet?
Not a lot. She didn't make a lot of money back then. I was a contract worker at the gas company, reading gas meters, and Nancy didn't drive, so I'd read the meters really fast. We'd drive to the next town, and she'd do her thing, and we'd drive all night to get home.
So what was a typical payday for a show back then?
Oh, $75.
Now, at any point, did you want to be a wrestler?
What's that?
At any point, did you want to be a wrestler?
Not really, no. I did my own thing with Kevin and the group, and that was enough.
All right.
No cane shots for you again.
So did Nancy start making big money at any point while you were married, or that all happened after she left?
It just happened. She started doing really, really well just after we got divorced. That's what I was trying to tell her, because we were not making any money doing this. It was a crazy life, going all over the place, all the traveling and so forth, and we were not making any money doing this. And I said, Nancy, if you're going to make it as a wrestler in the wrestling business, you're going to probably have to do it without me. There's no room for me in this.
Right.
I have to start taking all these trips without me. And that's when we decided to let her live her dream and follow her career and go from there.
I hear.
Fair enough.
All right, Jim, we want to thank you for coming on, and we really appreciate the insight on Nancy's life and your life, and it's been a pleasure having you on, Jim.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, and you all have a good night.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty then.
What'd you think, Farrell?
Very insightful. He's a class act. That's what I think.
Oh, no doubt.
And now I'm wondering, I'm like, the one of the deepest things he said is I wonder maybe if I didn't encourage her to get into wrestling, maybe things would have been different. He sounds like exactly what she may have needed ultimately. I mean, I hate to go in that direction, but I mean, look at how it turned out, and
Personally, I'm thinking to myself,
it's so unfair
wow,
to second guess. Who's going to know that this is what this man was going to do to Nancy? I mean, how's Jim supposed to know?
Start even on the other point. It's she, I know you.
Yeah.
I mean, if you had left or divorced your wife, and then all of a sudden found out the guy you were hanging out with now is her husband,
right?
That's a tough act too, right?
He's had to digest a lot of shit. I mean, quite honestly. And he's done it with class.
Well, with a lot of class.
I found him to be a very composed guest and very insightful and
positive stuff to say, right?
Yeah, amazing. Maybe we can learn something from that.
So let me ask you before we end the show tonight. You feel Nancy Benoit should be in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, as far as what she did, sure. Why not? Why not? Now, don't ask me about Chris, because you know what I think about
No, I'm not going to. You know what? You know how I feel about Chris
Yeah,
Benoit,
we know
right?
about Chris. I mean, and what's the most bizarre thing of all, and I'll say it till the day I pass, Chris Benoit would have been the last guy I would have picked in the locker room to do something like that. So you never know. You just never know. Chris Benoit was so quiet and so mellow and seemed so just not that. It's bad, bro. It's bad. Great guest, though, and an excellent addition to the Monty and the Pharaoh library.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Bro.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
I'm always amazed how people, they can love each other even after all they go through.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
4 years
Right.
and letting her go to
Right.
go on to a dream.
That's incredible.
And to run across and sit down at a plane and sit there and have a 3-hour conversation.
So he let go of her while others can't even let go of their peanut butter sandwich. It's just like, what is wrong with you?
You're right.
I mean, that is incredible what he did. He
It is
composed
incredible.
himself and moved on. I mean, amazing man, quite honestly. That was awesome.
All right, so we got about 2 minutes left. How do you feel about the new studio?
Beautiful. It's lovely. We have Luke in the other zip code. That works for me. We got these big power lights. Is it hot in here? It's not even hot. We got all these power
Luke, how'd you like your first show with Monty and the Pharaoh? I know we had a little bit of problems, but it takes time.
Jeez. You didn't spill my whiskey, did you? We're not off the air yet.
I had a phenomenal time.
Oh,
Phenomenal
my
time.
God.
We will work out all these kinks throughout the show, boys.
Yeah.
It just takes a little time,
Well,
man. Right? I know you were busy producing, but did you have a chance to listen what Jim had to say about Nancy at all?
Oh yeah, of course. That was a really great interview. It's just such a sad story, and it's really interesting just to hear a perspective from somebody who actually knows those kind of people, because you can watch as many documentaries about something as you want, but you don't really know anybody unless you're talking to the actual person who knew them.
Yep. That's why I waited. I'm going to watch it now. I wanted to talk to him.
Right
now,
I'll
watch
it. You see, you're pretty smart. That's why you're the star of the show.
Well, I want to get a fresh response off the cuff that's real, not just, I sat there and watched the whole thing and I've got it memorized. And where's your suit and tie, by the way? Yawn. Let's do things our way. That's why we are Monty and the Pharaoh. But this has been awesome. First experience.
It's been an awesome first experience.
And it's only going to get better.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So.
Again, we had some technical difficulties, right?
But it's going to snow Saturday. We don't even know what's in the air.
Exactly.
Santa's got corona.
Exactly.
What a mess.
All right. Anyway, I'm glad you helped out on that interview, boy, because I was struggling a little bit. I got to be honest with you, a little bit.
You think it's the beard?
No.
Yeah, sure.
I get when things.
Yeah. Maybe the hairs are growing in and going up toward the medulla and the cerebellum.
The hair does fall into my mouth, though. It does become a problem. Yeah, a little bit.
I don't know if Jolly Ranchers would be recommended right about now.
Jolly Ranchers.
I don't think so.
Anyway, Monty the Pharaoh can be seen on YouTube, Facebook Live, on the Monty the Pharaoh page, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Anchor.
Oh, yeah.
Where else?
And I feels a twitch.
Give me some help.
I feels a twitch.
There's a twitch coming. That's right.
A twitch.
So anyway, and on cable television, channel 115 from what is it, 8 to 8:30 on Tuesdays?
8:30 to 9 o'clock on Tuesdays,
and then
6:30 to 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturdays with my Frosted Flakes.
Anyway, I want to thank Luke for producing the show.
Thank you.
Want to thank Indie Music TV for hosting and producing this show. We'll be back next week. I want to thank you for your return.
Thank you. Do we do this now?
We got to do that.
That's so lame. Anyway,
again, I want to thank all the frontline workers, and my prayers are for all the families that have going through the pain that they're going through right now.
Absolutely.
And I want to thank Mr. Jim Daus for taking his time
to
come on the show, and like you said, adding to a library. And
he doesn't speak often, so nice job there, Mikey.
Well,
nice job.
And again, I got to tell you, I think I learned something from Mr. Daus.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
How a real human being should act.
Yes.
So again, thank you, Jim, where you're out there. All right, we'll catch you next week. 9:05 Thursday, Indie Music Television. Luke, thank you. Jimmy Farrow, thank you. Later.
Later.